For Crema Media in Johannesburg, I'm Sane Dhlamini. Author and political analyst Ralph Mathekga joins me to discuss SA politics. Welcome, Ralph.
Thank you so much for inviting me again.
Yes, thanks for making time for Polity. The Northwest Province has been placed under administration by the national government, and in your latest column, you said that President Cyril Ramaphosa was trying to cut off Premier's oxygen. Do you think this strategy is going to work?
I don't think so, but I think it was a very good attempt because we need to take into consideration what happened before the decision to place the provincial administration was reached. We have seen in the weeks preceding that decision attempt by the national leadership of the NC to intervene in Northwest after the protest to ask the Premier to leave office. And we have seen, you remember that day when the President came from the Commonwealth heads of government, where expectations was that he was going to fire the Premier. And that political solution actually failed. The political intervention failed because after all the calls and the protest and actually even an indication by Mahumapelo that he was going to go and he pulled that resignation. After all that, it became very clear, I think, to the national leadership of the NC that there is no way to deal with this politically. And then for me, I thought that their strategy was then to say that, look, what is the best way to undermine the Northwest Provincial Executive Committee, the entire PEC, under Mr. Mahumapelo? The best way was actually to make sure that those people in Northwest, those leaders in Northwest, are no longer allowed their hands on the budget, because we know what happens in provinces. We know that some of these protests that we see and the counter-protest and regional power consolidation, it all has to do with access to resources at this in that stage. So I think that the strategy was to say that by Ramaphosa was to say they had to cut off their lifeline by making sure that they place the province under administration, and that will therefore undermine Supra, and that will also actually get people to the idea that Supra is no longer in charge. Is it going to work? I don't think so, because the challenge here is that Supra remains the chairperson of the NC in Northwest, and Supra actually knows the power balance within the NC more than many people. There is no way he could have stayed without reading what was happening within the ANC. And reading within the ANC simply means that the top six of the ANC are not united about this. Some of them tend to send mixed messages as to what ought to happen. So that is why the whole thing is not going to work. Because Supra, I believe, is mobilizing. They are talking about even going to support Jacob Zuma, former president in KwaZulu-Natal. So the risk is this thing going beyond Northwest, this defiance of national leadership of the NC, going beyond Northwest, going into the province of KwaZulu-Natal, possibly going into the province of Free State, as it might be the case. So it will require a lot of political work. This has got nothing to do with governance. Of course, the intervention is about governance. But the issue here is not a governance issue. The issue is a political issue about the province where the Premier has gone really astray.
So are you expecting him to launch a fight back? And do you think that he will reactivate maybe his Premier League, as you've mentioned, maybe from those who are against Ramaphosa in KZN and Free State? And even in the NEC.
It has always been my view that there is no way Mr. Mahumapelo is going to leave that office peacefully and resign and relinquish his political hold in the province of Northwest. Because remember, we are talking also about allegations of corruption here. If he resigns and he therefore becomes weak as the provincial chair of the ANC in Northwest, or maybe if he allows to be kicked out of that position as well as the provincial chair, what that means is that he no longer has a leg to stand on to fight any means to investigate him. Because let's be honest here, members of ANC are actually fighting each other through government institution. That does not necessarily mean there is no case to answer in Northwest. I'm of the view that there are questions of corruption in Northwest and they need to be dealt with. But the reality is that any investigation now will not only result in dealing with question of corruption, but it will have political implications on the political life of Mr. Mahumapelo. And I think he's very much worried about that. That is why he will fight back, he will cling to that position, and he will try to actually activate support even outside the Northwest province.
You've also reminded us that former President Jacob Zuma placed iLimpopo under a caretaker government in 2011, and he was in charge of the ANC, and he did that very well, but it's not going well for Ramaphosa. Can you tell us the reasons for that?
You know, as South Africans, sometimes we prefer to forget some of the miseries that are happening within our society. And one of the misery that I think we are so desperate to forget is actually what happened in Nazareth at the ANC elective conference. Even if Mr. Ramaphosa won the presidency of the ANC, the reality is that he won with people who came from President Jacob Zuma's camp. What that means is that Mr. Ramaphosa's integrity ticket, as we always hear about, this anti-corruption czar, as he has come to be known, the biggest hurdle, the biggest stumbling block to that are his fellow comrades who are still loyal to President Jacob Zuma, or at least who came from President Jacob Zuma's corner. So the reality is that Mr. Ramaphosa won without his slate winning. So if you look at the top 6 of the ANC, it's a mixture of the anti-Zuma and the Zuma group, as we have known them. Of course, we might no longer talk about people being pro-President Jacob Zuma, but certainly it does not necessarily mean those people will certainly become pro-Mr. Ramaphosa and so forth. So that is the reason why you are going to have this. That is why you are having Northwest imploding. That is why Mr. Ramaphosa's leadership lacks that strength to do what Mr. Zuma did in Limpopo. When Mr. Zuma placed Limpopo under administration, he was fully in charge of the party. By then, if you remember very well, any branch that had problems, the Secretary General, Mr. Mantashe, used to disband them. There were so many branches of the ANC and regions that had been disbanded under Mr. Mantashe as the Secretary General of the party, working together with Mr. Jacob Zuma. Now, they were going straight into 2012 conference by then. And as my memory serves me, the main concern in Limpopo was not just about governance. It was because Julius Malema by then was actually using the province of Limpopo together with some within Limpopo to push against President Jacob Zuma's second term going into Mangaung. They did not want Mr. Zuma to gain the second term at the 2012 conference, and Malema was having that problem. Limpopo was understood to be one of the provinces that was against President Jacob Zuma. Unfortunately, Limpopo had governance problem with corruption, and Mr. Zuma went in there and closed the tap and made sure that the province in Limpopo, those who did not support him in Limpopo, no longer had access to the resources. So we cannot deny the political implications of that. But the difference here, as you point out, is that by then, the national leadership of the ANC was coherent. It presided upon the provinces and the region. We cannot say that now. Now, I actually call Limpopo ANC a franchise of the ANC because it operates as if it is completely independent, in defiance with the national leadership. We are seeing nearly similar sentiments in the province of KwaZulu-Natal as well, because the national leadership of the ANC is unfortunately not as strong at this point.
Yeah, talking about KZN, I was going to ask about it. How would you describe what is happening in KZN right now?
It has become a center stage, in my view, for those people who want to challenge the leadership of Mr. Ramaphosa. And the provincial leadership there, under Zikalala, of course, it has been disbanded through the court. They want to hold on to power. The big contest now is whether those regions can have their conferences, because if those regions can have their conferences, then you can have a new provincial leadership being elected subsequently. But there are those who know exactly that if they lose KZN as a whole, they will no longer be able to contest the national leadership. So that is why it is a center stage. And my worry, as I analyze this thing and as I looked at it, is that it appears as if the ANC national leadership is not careful, if they don't do sufficient work on the ground, they are going to end up with a situation where everyone who is angry in other provinces goes to KZN and mobilize against the national leadership or test the strength of the national leadership from KZN. That is why KZN is very much important, that the national leadership of the ANC gets KZN under control. The new provincial leadership should be in place. Those regions there, they need to get the party to a state where they can have their elective conferences and elect the provincial leadership, so that at least you can see a shift, a coalescence away from the old factions, at least to support maybe Mr. Ramaphosa's leadership. Because if the KZN is a big province, if it takes a stand against Mr. Ramaphosa, that is a problem.
Would you agree with the political analysts who are saying now that the opposition political parties, they don't have to work very hard to make sure that they win whatever because of what the ANC is doing, because of the blunders of the ANC?
Unfortunately, everyone is in trouble. I mean, my initial thoughts around February, after Mr. Ramaphosa became the president, my initial thoughts were that it is up to the ANC to lose elections. They were doing so well. And then I started seeing the problems within the ANC emerging as attempts were being made to clean the ANC, the time it took to remove Mr. Zuma, and also now you have the Northwest, you have got KZN, you have Eastern Cape as well, which is another problem there in the Eastern Cape. So all these problems, I started thinking that, oh, wait a minute, it looks as if the opposition parties are going to have a better year here. But then, look at what is happening within the DA. The question relating to Patricia de Lille. The DA is being embarrassed. Its internal processes are being questioned in the court. They lost against de Lille. They've got a mayor that they cannot control. There is lack of coherence within the party. But even most importantly within the DA, they just can't find a way to debate the question of race. They talk past each other. Mr. Maimane mentioned the question of white privilege. What did they do internally? Some senior members of the DA literally embarrassed him in the public by rejecting that notion. So it says that the DA itself seems to be on its own goal mission of undermining any gain that they could have in the 2019 elections as the ANC is having problem. There is one party that is just doing exceptionally well. It is the EFF. Because the EFF is not worried about anyone. They are being able to get the ANC, to call the ANC to order. They push the ANC to accept expropriation of land without a compensation motion in Parliament. They went on, they keep on threatening the DA that they will pull out of those metros, the coalition in which the EFF entered into with the DA. So if there is any party that is just running around having all the fun, and I believe that the EFF is likely to increase the electoral hold come 2019. I can say that 3% electoral increase, they will get it, and I think they might go into the double digit come 2019. They are now sitting at 6.4%. I won't be surprised if 2019 the EFF come above 10% or in that range, 11 or so. I think that will be a big marginal growth by the third fielding party in South Africa, the third party after the ANC, the DA, then you have the EFF. It will have performed much better than we have seen, because remember, no third party in this country has been able to retain the position of third party election on election. The EFF is about to do that.
So in your book, when we spoke to you in 2016, you predicted that Jacob Zuma was not going to go down without a fight. And we've seen him negotiating his exit before he left. And now you were also spot on when you said that his departure was not going to mean that South African politics was going to be better. What can you say about what we are seeing now?
Well, I do think, this is, I really wish I were wrong. I mean, what I've written in the book, a lot of it, I really wish I were wrong, because it is quite depressing. I mean, my view has been that you just cannot fully get rid of corruption in South Africa. People are going to fight back, because corruption is an institution. And there are those within the ANC who have taken ideological position that actually, the whole thing of some who have taken the position on radical economic transformation and so forth. Some of them are very questionable characters. And as you and I are speaking today, you've got the new president of the ANC. You still have some of the ministers from the previous administration who have been implicated in state capture. And for me, my view has been that it takes a long time to uproot corruption from the institutional infrastructure. And Mr. Zuma, he's still fighting. When he goes to KZN, people go to support him in court. Now, as we are speaking, his former president, some in Northwest are saying, go and support Mr. Zuma. He has not been found guilty. Jacob Zuma's project is still there. And I believe that one of the reasons where the ANC got itself to having to adopt the policy resolution on expropriation of land, some of the radical policies, is because President Jacob Zuma pushed on those policies. We know in the last few months of his leadership, he pushed for that. So the only thing that I think President Jacob Zuma lost because he miscalculated was installing his own proxy to be the president. betting on Dhlamini Zuma was quite a blunder. Had he thought about somebody else, he could have won that battle as well. Because my view is that, look at the margin that Mr. Ramaphosa won, about 145. It shows that within the ANC, there is no overwhelming view to reject former President Jacob Zuma's politics. And that politics might take a different reformulation, but it's still there, and it is the politics of corruption. It is the politics of divisive politics. It is the divide and rule politics. It is the politics of ethnicity. It is the politics of consolidation in the provinces. That's what we know. And Mr. Ramaphosa is trying to come up with a different sense of politics, saying, I'm going to push for modern politics. Look at the resistance within the ANC.
Yeah.
So I really wish I were wrong. I would be very happy to say that, you know what, throw the book away. Everything else I've said was wrong. But unfortunately, that's not the case. It's the reality we have to live with.
And Jacob Zuma also made a surprise appearance yesterday at the KZN legislature. And I've read this morning that the opposition parties were not happy, and they walked out because he was not even sitting where visitors sit. He was with the politicians. So what do you make of that? Do you also take it as maybe a sign that there is really a factionalism in KZN? There
is no doubt about it. And again, we just spoke about that divisive politics. Look at how the KZN legislature is being divided on a president who's gone, who's supposed to be gone. He steps in there, and you start seeing some saying that, but he can attend, but he shouldn't attend, some walking out. And what is it that Mr. Zuma seeks to achieve? He always wants to make a point that I still have a support, and I'm still around. You can talk all you want on your anti-corruption as you want, but I'm President Jacob Zuma. I've got a support wherever I walk in. You will feel my presence. He does that. He's yet to appear further in court. We are going to see the spectacles there as he appears in court. And I think this thing of him going to the legislature, you know, it's just Mr. Zuma just icking them, just wanting to show his detractors that he's still there and he's still part of South Africa's politics. You just cannot wish him away overnight.
I also wanted to ask you a question that I've asked in our poll question, which says, do you think that President Ramaphosa is on the right track to dismantle corruption in South Africa? Oh yeah,
I think Ramaphosa is on the right track. Look at what is happening at the state-owned entities. Look at the boards. Look at what has happened. Danel, your Transnet, your ESCOM board as well. I hope SAA as well. And you are seeing the cleanup underway. But the biggest enemy that Ramaphosa is facing is not people out there. It's people within the ANC. His comrades going to allow him to go all the way out. That's what I'm trying to explain even in my new book.
We can't wait to read your new book. But lastly, what are your predictions for 2019 elections?
I think the ANC still stand a good chance to win. I don't think the opposition in South Africa is strong. I think that Ramaphosa as a person, not as an ANC leader, but as a person, he has been able to destabilize the opposition. They are finding it very difficult to craft a way to oppose him. And you don't get a scandal week in, week out. So I think there is a sense of credibility that seems to be setting in. It will also be determined a lot by the extent to which ANC members allow him to lead them. But Ramaphosa is not an outright electoral liability. He's not an electoral liability. I think people will, even those who might not want to vote for the ANC, might say, you know, there is still something there. Maybe this man can do something. Because the reality is that the ANC remains a dominant party. So I think my prediction is that the ANC will do well, but I don't think they will get a strong majority. I don't think they should get a strong majority. Because if they get a strong majority, the party might go back to its old ways. So I think that the reality of losing some of the provinces, I mean, they are questionable. There are provinces where their performance needs to be, I think, will be on the spotlight here. Look at Northwest. There is a possibility here in Northwest that it might happen, what will happen in Northwest might be what we have seen in Tshwane in the 2016 local government election. Not anything by the opposition, just an implosion within the ANC itself, resulting in members of the ANC not campaigning for their own party. They are risking Northwest now. Gauteng is what the opposition are gunning for, and they stand a very good chance in Gauteng, the opposition, to actually reduce the NC's majority further. That is where the problem is in Gauteng. Gauteng has had life Esidimeni, for that matter. Western Cape, I don't think the ANC has a chance of getting back the Western Cape, irrespective of how the DA performs there and how the DA manages its own problems of internal coherences thereof. So it's going to be a very interesting election. But if you look at it, if you don't focus only on the national, because if you look at the national, you get deceived. You start thinking there is this thing that is national from provinces. No. The national vote is a tally of provincial. So if you start looking at provinces individually, you see problems that the ANC is encountering, which will determine the aggregate vote that they get at a national level.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
That was author and political analyst Ralph Mathekga speaking to Crema Media's Polity about SA politics.